Hey, fellow gardeners. I'm Jeremy. Jeremy Vasquez, co-owner of Little Shop of Hydros. We're located in Phoenix, Arizona, in the beautiful sunny state of Arizona. So we've opened up about 10 months ago. We have a full garden store. We specialize in hydroponics equipment, any indoor environment, kind of lighting, CO2, fans, you name it, we have it. We also cater to organic gardeners as well. We sell lots of organic amendments, ladybugs, praying mantis, worms, worm castings, you name it. We have it. So definitely check us out, www.littleshopofhydros.com. We hold lots of classes. So we have our learning center inside the store, and we've been doing lots of different kinds of classes. And today we're going to be, doing a class with Greg Peterson. So Greg Peterson is an amazing gardener here, and he's well known in Arizona and beyond. He recently moved out of Arizona, so we're lucky to have him still to be able to come and do these classes with us. He created the Urban Farm organization. So I'm going to go ahead and let Greg speak on that. And we really appreciate you being able to do this, Greg, and tune in with us and educate about gardening.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. This is what I love to do. And I planted my first garden. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. But I really, I'm really love what you've done, Jeremy. We've known each other for what, 2 decades, maybe?
Probably right around there.
Yeah. And, you're always doing something incredible in the community. So thanks for that. And if you haven't been to his store, if you don't go for any other reason, go and check out the mural. It is an absolutely epic mural. I absolutely love that. So good job, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, let's jump in here. Let me share my screen. And let's see, Microsoft PowerPoint. So for those of you all, there's just a few of us here tonight, which is just fine. Put your questions in the chat box. We'll go there. I think that'll be easiest. Questions in the chat box. So we're going to talk jumpstart your spring garden. And the good news about tonight is that I'm not going to teach you how to garden. I guess that's the bad news. The good news is I'm going to teach you how to think about gardening. And that's an important piece, because the single biggest thing you can do to fail at your gardening is placement. And so we're going to talk about that and observation and so on and so on. Jeremy, do you want to mute your video, or do you want to stay on with me? Either way is fine. I think you should be able to.
You want me to just mute the voice, right? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. All right, cool. So I started planting gardens in Phoenix, Arizona in 1974. This was me in the 8th grade. That same year, I wrote a paper on how we were overfishing the oceans. God knows how in 1974, a 14-year-old knows that we're overfishing the oceans, but I did. And I knew that there was something inherently wrong with the way we were eating and living on the planet. And I set out to do something about it. In 1981, I had this vision of what we would now call a regenerative farm, a farm where everything got used and nothing was wasted. Back then I was on the Arizona Aquaculture Association board, and we visited a farm in Gila Bend in 1981. And they were cutting up the fish, cleaning the fish, and they were throwing away 70% of the leftover stuff about the fish, and it just didn't make sense to me. So fast forward 10 years later, there were several things that happened for me. One of them was permaculture. Permaculture I like to call the art and science of working with nature. How do we work in the flow of nature rather than against nature? We as human beings think that we know how to do it better than nature. And I have news for you, we don't. Nature knows how to do it best. Nature always bats last. And we need to start paying attention to that. So 1991 brought to me permaculture, which I like to call the art and science of working in the flow of nature. And for me, it was a like an explosion, a brain explosion. For me, it was, oh my gosh, there's actually something in the world that we can call the way that I think. Because having a system where there's something that you throw away, where there's waste, where there's garbage, just doesn't make sense. The other thing that happened for me in 1991 was I read a book called Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. And you know what? That's all I'm going to say about it. Go and get that book and read it. It's a fiction book, but it explains a lot about how we live on this planet. All right. And then in 2001, so I must have been about 40 then, I turned my farm, my home, into what we call the urban farm. The urban farm, I like to call an environmental showcase home. It became a movement in Phoenix. Tens of thousands of people over 20 years visited the urban farm. The urban farm, just to give you a picture, it was 80 feet wide and 160 feet deep, and the entire landscape was edible. I had spent over 30 years creating the landscape so that there was food everywhere. And we did tours and classes and a whole lot of experimenting in the space. Since 1999, I had chickens there. And now what I'm doing, this is, if you're seeing my video, you see my front yard. I'm working on doing the same thing here in Asheville, North Carolina. We are on 4 acres, and currently I have over 200 trees and plants on order for planting in February and March of this year. All right, so let's jump into the class. The super simple secret is plugging into how nature works. That's really what we need to do. We need to figure out how we can move ourselves forward, plugging into the flow of nature. And natural systems that propel the forest forward can also be planned and planted in your garden. It's really that simple. It's a process, but it's simple. So permaculture, or regenerative design, is when we're studying permaculture, what we have to do is pay attention. Paying attention to what's going on in the space. Observation is the single #1 thing that we can do to build a happy space, a sustainable and a regenerative space. And then once that's done, after growing food in my yard and front and backyard at the urban farm in Phoenix for over 30 years, things would go to seeds. We'd have carrots and parsley and basil and broccoli and lettuce and sweet potatoes and cowpeas and beans. All these things I would let go to seed every year, and they would just plant themselves. And then they would come back year after year after year, so that all my job was harvesting the bounty that arrived there. And you have to do that by paying attention. One of the things that I have said for years is spend a year on a property before you make any major changes. And I've said that, and I know it logically, but I didn't really get it until I left my property of 32 years called the Urban Farm in Phoenix, and I moved to Asheville, North Carolina. We've now been here for 9 months. And I get it, like, to a much deeper level. We have to spend time observing, paying attention to what's going on in the space before you make any major changes. So
I agree with that, Greg.
What's that?
So I agree with you.
Yeah, right. Pay attention. So tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 simple steps. This says fall garden, but it's the spring garden, or any garden really for that matter. Observe and understand your microclimates. Talk about water, especially in the desert, and building a forest. So we've got those 3, and then in a little while I've got 3 more that we're going to kind of jump in and unpack. So observe. You have to pay attention to the positives and the negatives. So what is in your space that might be a negative? And I'm going to propose that they're not really negatives. We just have to pay attention to them. Could be the neighbor kids, could be the neighbor's dogs. It could be rabbits or squirrels. I have a patio right out here in front of me. I sit and look over my backyard, and there's literally squirrels that run across the back patio every day. And squirrels are going to take out my garden if I let them. So I have to do planning for them to make sure that I protect the gardens from squirrels. And other negatives might be bugs or weeds. Bottom left, and we're going to talk about this more, leaving dirt, especially in the desert. We want to make sure that we cover the dirt with something, whether it be woody mulch, 6 to 8 to 12 inches of woody mulch, or cowpeas or sweet potatoes, but you need to shade your dirt. So that's the observing the negatives, observing the positives. Yes, so that's almost 3 inches of rain. That was my rain gauge in Phoenix, Arizona on, I think, September. It was someday in September 2014. On that day, we had over 29,000 gallons of water fall on our property. And you can imagine 3 inches of rain in Phoenix, what that did to the city. It shut it down. Things were flooded, overpasses, yada, yada. My yard acted like a great big sponge and just sucked it all up. There was no standing water 8 hours later in my yard because of the way I built soil. Bottom right picture is healthy soil, building healthy soil. We're going to talk about that a lot in a little while. And then observing where the sun is at. The single biggest thing you can do to fail on your garden is put it in the wrong place. And we'll talk about that. So observe your microclimates. Microclimates are spaces in your yard that are cooler or warmer in a particular time of year or time of day. What makes microclimates warmer is concrete, gravel. What makes them cooler is grass, trees, that kind of stuff. So this picture that you see in the bottom right hand of my screen, that's my backyard at the urban farm. My outdoor kitchen, and way in the distance, that white thing, that's our outdoor shower. And this is a grapevine that started growing up an old dead grapefruit tree in 2004. So from 2004 to 2014, before that tree finally rotted away and fell over, it was the structure that held up the grapevines that were over my back patio. This was a western facing back patio. So what that did is that cooled the back patio 15 to 20 degrees by having that shade in place. And it gave us grapes. There were so many grapes that came off of that grapevine. It was absolutely amazing. So this is just something to observe for. What I really encourage you to do is go out, set your smartphone for June 21st and December 21st, and go out at noon and look to see where the sun is at. That will give you a lot of information about where to put your garden. We're going to talk about where the sun is at next. And what do I mean by that? Where is the sun at in the sky? It's lower in the winter, it's higher in the summer. So this picture that you're looking at top left is a western exposure. A western exposure means it gets sun from noon until sundown. This is one of the warmest spaces in your yard. So you'll see what I've done. I've got some cowpeas growing up an old ladder in the foreground. And I've got a piece of shade cloth over the garden on a western exposure. So the western exposure is going to be the hardest place for you to grow in the desert. A southern exposure gets sun all day, especially in the winter. It's not so much sun in the summer on a southern exposure. An eastern exposure gets sun from sunup until noon. And a northern exposure essentially doesn't get any sun. So how you decipher those things is if, with this picture on the top left, if my back was standing against that wall, I was looking west. If you stand against a wall and you're looking east, that's an eastern exposure. If you're standing against a wall or a fence or anything like that, and you're looking south, that's a southern exposure. If you're standing against a wall and you're looking north, that's a northern exposure. Northern exposures are the hardest places to grow, believe it or not, because they're lacking in sunlight. So if you can avoid a northern exposure, that is best. Eastern exposure is the best place to grow in the desert. Absolutely, hands down. All right, so your proper garden placement is really what's going to propel your garden success forward. This happens to be my first garden here in Asheville, North Carolina. It was an absolute miserable failure. I had been growing food in Phoenix for over 50 years. And I came here and I tried to use the same tactics here that I used there. And it was like, forget about it. So I learned a lot with this garden. The biggest thing I did wrong was I didn't supplement the soil enough. There wasn't enough organic matter in the soil. We have heavy clay soil here. We have heavy clay soil in Arizona. So your job in Arizona is to heavily supplement the soil. Our dirt in Arizona, all right, we'll talk about that in a minute. Our dirt in Arizona has less than 1% organic matter. The dirt here is probably in the same boat. So you got to add lots and lots of organic matter. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But here's one of the startling things that I came to understand about 10 years ago in Phoenix. You never, in Phoenix, never want to leave the ground uncovered. I took a temperature meter out in August in the afternoon, and the temperature at ground level was 140 degrees with no ground cover. 20 inches or 6 inches down, it was 120 degrees, which that's enough to cook your plants. But notice up top, 89 degrees under the plants. This is the difference between your plants making it and them not making it. So especially in the desert, you want to grow a ground cover. This particular ground cover are sweet potatoes. And Cash and Josephina, to grow sweet potatoes, go to the grocery store, buy organic sweet potatoes, cut them in half, let them start sprouting out on the countertop, and then sometime in the beginning of March, take them out, put some planting mix in a hole, some kind of compost planting mix in a hole about 6 inches deep, and plant the sweet potatoes. And they will love the ground there. They pretty much grow in anything, I've found. So sweet potatoes are great. You got to make sure that you know what to do about water. I know that at the place where Cash is growing food at, they're using flood irrigation. So that's something that you have to kind of plan for. But you need to figure out where your water is coming from. And I really want to have you pay attention to how many sources of water you have. So my house in the middle of Phoenix, obviously we had city water, but then there's gray water. Gray water is any water that goes down any drain of your house, except your toilet and your kitchen sink. It's legal to use that in Arizona. Pay attention for that. We at the Urban Farm and at Spaces for Opportunity have flood irrigation. That's a different kind of water. Another water that I found was condensation water coming off of my air conditioning unit. And in the summertime when it was super humid, you get 2 or 3 gallons of water a day. That's a lot of water. So start thinking about where your water comes from and where it goes, and how to use as much as you can. All right, and we'll do classes for this in the future. In fact, Jeremy, we might want to do one of these for your crew at your store. My favorite way to water is called drip tape. It's super efficient. The system works, and yeah, it's called drip tape. It's used on medium and large farms, and we've down shifted it and have it available for people for as little as 100 square foot garden. So and we teach all about that. All right, so now let's jump into creating healthy soil, selecting the right seed, and planting at the right time. So we've already talked about garden placement and observing microclimates. So that should give you an idea of how to place your garden most successfully. Healthy soil. Healthy soil produces nutrient-dense food. It grows bug-resistant plants. Yes, it does. It smells great. It holds water. It makes happy plants. And so here's my question for you. What makes healthy soil? Because if what you have in your backyard is just dirt, that's not healthy soil. Healthy soil, there's 5 components of healthy soil. It's dirt, organic matter, water, airspace, and everything that's alive in the soil. Remember I said earlier today that in the desert, we have less than 1% organic matter. You can't grow anything in that. If you dig a hole and plant a plant or plant a tree in straight organic and straight dirt from the desert, forget it. It's going to struggle. And only the strong are going to survive there. The fix for that is add lots and lots and lots of organic matter in the form of woody mulch, in the form of compost, in the form of planting mix. And those things are used for different things. If you have a dirt backyard, I highly suggest that you put 8 to 15 inches of woody mulch in your backyard. And what'll happen over time is that organic matter, the woody mulch breaks down, and at the interface between the woody mulch and the dirt, it starts building healthy soil very quickly. I had a lady that I talked to on the phone today, and I was having that conversation with her, and she said, oh yeah, I did that to my entire backyard. I put a foot of woody mulch on my entire backyard, and you wouldn't believe, and I actually do believe, how she said you wouldn't believe how great the soil is and how things are growing amazingly well. So creating healthy soil by adding lots and lots of organic matter is the simplest and most effective thing that you can do. And then picking the right seeds. So there's 3 different kinds of seeds you've probably heard of, genetically modified seeds. The good news is at this point in time, we really don't have to worry. I want you to be aware of what genetically modified seeds are. It's when they take a gene from a snail and they put it into a plant. That doesn't happen in nature. The good news is that the companies that are doing this, that are putting these GMO seeds out, we're not their target. The home market is not their target. So for the most part, we don't have to worry about that. So if you want to go dig into what genetically modified means, my Urban Farm podcast has a bunch of episodes with Jeffrey Smith. But go work on that. But other than that, I don't talk much about GMOs because we just really don't have to be concerned about them in our garden seeds. Hybrids. Hybrids are, you take watermelon A and watermelon B and you cross-pollinate them, and you got watermelon C, which is a seedless watermelon. And are they bad? No. Do I plant hybrids? Yes. Do I plant them a lot? No, generally not. And often the seed packets will say hybrid on them, or heirloom or open pollinated. And heirloom and open pollinated, they're pretty much synonymous. And if you plant an heirloom Armenian cucumber, what you're going to get in the second round, in the F1, they call it F1 round of that, is an Armenian cucumber that looks like its parent. And then you save those seeds and plant them again. Again, they look like their parents. So they're very stable. One of the things that I did at the urban farm was I primarily only planted with heirlooms and open pollinated. That way, when these things go to seed, the seeds spread themselves in my landscape and plant themselves the next year and the next year and the next year. And literally there were dozens and dozens of things at the urban farm that came back year after year that all I had to do was manage picking them. It was so cool. So pick the right seeds. The next thing is you need to plant at the right time. You cannot trust local nurseries and big box stores to bring in plants at the right time. So in Arizona, if you're seeing in the fall a cucumber or pumpkin or watermelon or squash, they're not going to make it. Those go in the spring and summer. If in the spring you're seeing broccoli or cabbage or cauliflower, those kind of things, forget it. They're not going to make it. So what you can do, this is my planting calendar I created about 20 years ago with Matt Sir. And it tells you what to plant when, and you can go get a copy of this at plantingcalendar.org. So just go to plantingcalendar.org and download your free copy of it. But you need to make sure that you plant at the right time. And I've got some healthy soil hacks for you. And then I've got a link that you can go to sign up for for a couple of these things. But there's something called sheet mulching or lasagna gardening. There's a book called Lasagna Gardening out there. And basically what you do with sheet mulching or lasagna gardening is you put down a layer of brown. So leaves, save your leaves. In fact, at the urban farm before I left every year, I had multiple neighbors that would save their leaves for me and bring them to me. They would literally just show up on my doorstep. It was so incredibly cool. And that could be a layer for sheet mulching. And then you put a little bit of chicken poop or manure on top of that, just a couple of shovelfuls. And then you go with another layer. And then you go with a little bit more manure. And before long, you have something, you have something that's looks like lasagna. It could be, I used to do lasagna gardening 18 to 36 inches thick. And then what happens is over the course of a gardening season, that 18 to 36 inches goes down to 2 to 4 inches and makes this amazingly healthy soil. So check out that. Sheet mulching is what we call it in permaculture. Lasagna gardening is the book. But again, it goes back to building healthy soil. And I've said for years, and people kind of look at me funny, we need the weeds to arrive. Weeds, let them grow in your garden. Weeds are pioneer species. That means they show up first and they do the heavy digging. A mallow plant will grow up to 6 feet tall, and the root of that mallow plant can easily go 6 foot deep. And that root is going down and harvesting nutrients and pulling those nutrients up out of the ground and making them available. So what I do is I let the weeds arrive, and then I go in with a knife and cut them off a half inch below the soil level. And the top part, and I don't let them go to seed, but the top part goes into my compost bin or goes to the chickens. And then what happens is that root that's in the ground, for let's say a mallow or a cheeseweed or lamb's quarters, that root in the ground rots and puts compost right in our soil. It's lazy gardening at its best, right? And then I got 2 more quick stories for you, and then we'll jump to questions. I think the next slide is questions. About 10 years ago, I get this phone call from a longtime friend of mine. Steve had done my computer work for me since the 1980s. And he said, Jan, my wife would like a garden. It's like, great, send me a picture. And so Jan's garden was on an eastern exposure. So remember, it gets sun from sun up until noon. And it was about the size, this is Perry's instant garden here on the right, but Jan's garden was about this size on an eastern exposure. And what I did is I went in and I brought in a truckload, just in the back of my pickup truck, a truckload of planting mix. And in about 45 minutes, while I was unloading the soil in her garden, she was watering it. And then we took about 10 minutes and planted seeds. And in less than an hour, Jan's garden was installed and planted, and I was out of there. I think it took me 47 minutes to basically fill her garden bed with soil and plant it. She was doing the planting. And what I want you to take note of is that I didn't do any digging. And this garden that you're seeing the picture of here, we didn't do any digging there either. Basically, we went in and we raked back the gravel. We put the 4-foot by 8-foot garden box in place. This took me 6 hours to build and fill. And then we filled it with a foot of the good planting mix, and we planted it. Gardens don't have to be hard. And what happened with Jan's garden, I put 5 inches worth of planting mix on top. What we do is we let those plants that are growing, they'll dig down into the dirt underneath it and do the digging for you. And the weed roots will do the digging for us. So I am a big, big, big proponent of lazy gardening. All right. So if you would like, you can go to healthysoilhacked.com. And at healthysoilhack.com, there is a video. I think there's a video on Jan's garden. I know there's a video for sheet mulching that I made, and a video for Perry's Almost Instant Garden and how I made that. And you can find me at urbanfarm.org. I think we're there, Jeremy.
Awesome. So I think, can you see me now?
I can.
Well, yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, I love the brief, or, the history of how you got started, and, you've done a lot here in Arizona and beyond. And I think it's been pretty amazing what you've been able to create and do here for and beyond, actually. I mean, so many people know about you from way beyond Arizona. And I think, just spreading that education is key.
Everything, and this, if we're educating people and engaging people, they're going to go out and do better work in the world. You know that, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Then that's, you've inspired me a lot to be able to really put out, different forms of education, and.
Well, I love that you have a classroom there. That's epic.
It is. And, we've had some amazing classes so far, so we're still getting it rolling. But I mean, it's definitely been, really good feedback on, people that are attending. They're enjoying the classes and what we're teaching them. So, I mean, I think, it's, more and more people I see, coming into the store are curious about growing their own food, and if they don't have space, we can accommodate that with hydroponics and, indoor gardening. For instance, the tower garden. All about the tower garden.
Oh my gosh. Do you sell tower gardens?
I do. Yeah.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. I have grown food. I grew food in Phoenix from 1974 until I left last year. And in 2010, I get this post from a friend of mine who says, "You've got to check out this tower garden." It's like, tower what? And I bought a tower garden in 2010 before they were shipping them.
Wow. And yeah, you got the very first one then.
I got one of the very first ones. And I tell you, to this day, it is one of my absolute favorite ways to grow. They are epic. And what we used to do in Phoenix with our tower garden is we eat a lot of salads. And so what we used to do in Phoenix is we used to grow greens in the summertime inside.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't grow this stuff outside. It's just too dang hot. So we grew our lettuce in the back room at the urban farm with a light kit. And you got that epic light kit on yours. There you go.
So yeah, you
Love,
can see here, we've had this running for about 10 months. Obviously the nasturtium right here has gone crazy and taken over.
right? Gotta love
But
it.
yeah, you were talking about lettuce. I mean, we've harvested so much lettuce. I mean, these are newer starts, but we've harvested so much edible food off of this. And
Yeah,
this one tower right here, we can fit about 40 plants in a 3x3 area. Um,
that's
so
one of the
obviously,
that's one of the newer ones.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, and with this as well, I mean, you know, being outside, if you grow outside with this, you don't need the light, obviously, but you can go up to
right.
13 feet. And I think, being able to go up 13 feet and be able to produce that much food,
Yeah,
that small of an area is just amazing.
right. Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean,
Well, especially right now, we need to be paying attention more and more to um, where our food's coming from and the frailty of our food system. We do have an epic food system in this country. It feeds about 330 million people 3 times a day until
right,
there's an interruption like COVID or a storm. We had Hurricane Ian, and we're far enough inland that we didn't get hit by the hurricane in September. But what happened is the grocery store shelves got emptied, and it took them a full month to get everything restocked. It was amazing to watch. It was absolutely amazing to watch. And look at the price of eggs right now. The price of lettuce, the price. We're going to have to, if we're going to be able to afford to eat moving into the future, we're going to have to grow our own. And hydroponics is an epic way to grow your own.
that's right. I've been doing hydroponics for about 20, 25 years now.
Yeah,
And, it's been a journey, obviously, but I loved it when I first started growing with hydroponics. I fell in love with it. And then years later, about 10 years into that, I started growing in soil. And then I was like, wow, I love both worlds.
right.
Being able to be knowledgeable on growing indoor and outdoor and be able to educate people on both of those kind of subjects is
Yep.
amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
as you know,
exactly.
I pride myself in that, and in the community garden that we created at Mountain View Park out
Oh,
here.
that's
Um,
so epic. I love that you did that.
that's one of my biggest things that I've done, and it's brought so much life to me, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't, I would never take that back. I love being there, still being part of it and educating people there, and just about community. I think that's where we
Yeah.
need to get back. Like you said, since COVID, people got scared. Obviously they wanted to stay away from people, and we need to get back to that community. And really, we've seen so many things happen since COVID with food prices, the availability, like you said. I mean, at first, shelves were empty. People
Yep.
were starting to panic. And I think that
Yep.
started raising people's awareness and opening their eyes to the fact that they need to be able to supply their own food and be prepared. The preparedness is the main thing. You know,
Yes.
if we only have the food that's in our refrigerator, that's only going to last a couple days. And if the power goes out, it's not going to last that many days at all.
Right.
So, we need to have resources and build that community to where we're not alone.
Yeah.
I think, I used to say this a long time ago, I would love to see someday in neighborhoods to where people are growing together, like in their own neighborhood without a community garden being close by. Like they're just growing food in their yards
Yeah.
and they share it. Not everybody can grow everything, right? But if
Right.
we teamed up with our neighbors, somebody could specialize in certain crops and you guys grow together and share.
Yeah.
And I think, the future of food, I think is going to be, with more people like you and I out there educating people and promoting it. I think the future of food is going to be pretty awesome on a smaller scale to where we're not, relying on so much commercial agriculture. And you
Right.
brought up something a minute ago.
Please.
I saw something the other day about what you said about, it's like a handful of people that are feeding all the mouths in America, like those 3 times a day.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's kind of scary when you think of it that way.
Yeah. Well, and there was some academic work done about 15 years ago out of the UK, and they found that there's a 3-day supply of food in any urban area.
Wow.
That's it. And I say there's a 3-hour supply, because once people get a whiff of, oh my gosh, there's going to be shortages, the toilet paper just flies off the shelf, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was pretty ridiculous to see that. So I mean, that's just toilet paper. Imagine food. I mean, people would be literally, there would be a lot of chaos. People would be hurting each other, stealing more from each other. I think that's where
Right.
we have to build that community so we can stay safe in those situations.
Exactly. We've got to build this into our neighborhoods. I've said for years that the, with a capital T, solution to our global food problem is growing in our backyards and front yards.
I agree.
Just grow our own and share it.
One thing I like to say to my customers, which makes perfect sense to me, and I know it will to you as well, you know, for indoor gardening, here in Arizona and Phoenix, no matter who you are, if you have a home, apartment, whatever it is, we cool and heat our homes to the ideal temperature for plants to thrive, no matter what it is, year round.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
And we have to keep that in mind. And when I bring that up to people, they're like, you know what, that's right. And then most
Yep.
of the time, we live with outside of our means. We have, most people, if they have a 3-bedroom home or whatever it is, you're only in certain parts of your house at certain parts of the day. Like you're in your room to go to sleep, you're in the kitchen. There's all this space that can house plants and then create not only food for us, but clean oxygen as well. And
Yep.
they're our plant friends. They bring people out of stress, anxiety. You know what I
Right?
mean? They're so good to us. They don't just feed us. They give us much more joy than that.
Yeah.
So Greg, I
Yeah.
really appreciate you taking the time to come on tonight and really educate.
Oh my gosh. But hold on.
and-
Before we go there though, I want to, let's see, we got Aaliyah, Happy Grower, Josephina, Cash, and Lex. Do you guys have any questions for us before we jump off? You can put them in the chat, probably be easiest. Cash says, are there any roots of any weeds that you don't want in your garden? Yes. Bermuda grass and nutgrass. And you probably have lots of that out at Spaces of Opportunity. But yeah, Bermuda grass and yeah.
Once grass gets in there, it's hard to get out of there. That's for sure.
And a natural way to get rid of gophers. We can trap them. You don't ever want to poison them. There's something called a black hole gopher trap. So, you can do that if you want. If you're planting trees, what we highly suggest that you do is that you line your tree hole with chicken wire. So in fact, I'm going to be doing that in my front yard. In my backyard, I've got over 250 trees and bushes on order. And I'm going to dig the holes and I'm going to build a cage out of chicken wire, sides and bottom, that will surround it and keep the gophers out. Because I've never seen this much gopher traffic as I have here. So let's see. Josephina says, I live in an apartment with a south-facing balcony. Oh my gosh, you are in such luck. The only thing better than a south-facing balcony, Josephina, would be an east-facing balcony. But a south-facing balcony, what you want to start doing is tracking the sun. So pay attention this time of year, and the sun goes higher in the sky through June 21st, and then it comes down lower in the sky after that. But watch where the sun is at. You're going to want to figure out how to put some western shade in place on your back patio. Maybe grow some big things in pots that shade, or and if it's a true southern facing, you may not have any problem with the western sun in the afternoon, because the sun actually in Phoenix, Arizona sets in the northwest quadrant in the summertime. So yeah. She also says, how big should a container be for sweet potatoes or potatoes? The bigger the better. 15, I would not go anything smaller than a 15-gallon tree tub. If you can get 25-gallon tree tubs. Do you guys sell anything like that? Any pots? You probably sell you probably have the cloth bags, don't you?
I can order the cloth bags, the bigger ones, and I have plastic bigger pots as well.
Yeah, there you go. There's your source for him, Josephina. Lex says, this has been great. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge. Excited to learn more. Yes, excellent. Awesome.
And, Greg, can you put out how people can get a hold of you if they have
Great.
any other further questions?
Yeah, so you can find me at urbanfarm.org. You can find my podcast with over 750 episodes. Have you been on the podcast in the past?
I have in the past, yeah, but
Yeah,
not
we should
as a
get
guest, but
yeah, we should get you again. In fact, we do a monthly garden chat, and we should do one on hydroponics this year and bring you on as our guest.
yeah, I'm
Let's
willing.
let's do that. All right, cool.
And
So
awesome.
urbanfarm.org and urbanfarmpodcast.com, and go grow your own food.
That's right. And if you need any equipment, here in Arizona, if you're in Phoenix, Arizona, Little Shop of Hydros, we have everything you need for indoor and outdoor gardening. And we try to, assist in any way possible, by, if we don't know it, we got people like Greg over here that experts in it, especially trees and things like that. Oh yeah, with trees, when's your next fruit tree program coming up?
Oh, yes. Okay, good. Well, we're in the midst of it. We're open to the public tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. And then we're open probably next Friday and Saturday, and then we're done. We run a fruit tree education program. This is the Urban Farm Fruit Tree Education Program. I've been doing it for 23 years, and we do classes year round on fruit trees, and then people can pre-order and buy fruit trees from us. And then we're open just like a pumpkin or Christmas tree lot. We're only open for about 15 days a year. So tomorrow, Thursday, I don't know, what's the date tomorrow? The 26th, January 26th, 27th, and 28th, we're open at 4549 North 7th Street. You can just come on down. We're open to the public and see what we have. We have bare root peaches, apples, apricots, plums. We've got pomegranates, figs, grapes, mulberries. We've got a few tropicals. So yeah, we got all kinds of cool plants for you to come and learn how and get them planted.
And one thing to point out, these are all fruit trees and plants that do well in our environment here in Arizona and Phoenix. So
the reason I started this program 23 years ago is because you can still, to this day, go into every big box store and most nurseries, and they will sell you a fruit tree that will never make fruit. And that is just absolutely bogus. So all of the plants that we bring in are fruitful in the low desert. Absolutely.
And I'm just curious, how many trees do you guys sell in that short amount of time?
We deliver between 4,000 and 5,000 trees a year.
Holy cow, that's a big number. That's awesome. That's a lot of
fruit. We've been doing that for 10 years. The prior 10 years, well, in 1999, I started out with ordering 100 trees, and then, it kind of went up and up and up. And so I figure we've caused to plant about 80,000 fruit trees in the low desert. Yeah.
Hey, well, you've made a huge impact so far, Greg, and you're continuing to do that on a daily. So we look forward to seeing what you got coming in the future, especially with your own farm. So thank you again for coming on. I can't wait to see your farm progress and just to get to be where you want it to be.
Cool.
So thank you so much, man. Appreciate you.
Keep up the good work, everybody.
Attending.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
And I'll get you the recording tomorrow, and I'll put a fancy thing on the front, and we'll post it on YouTube.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, cool. Thanks, buddy. Keep up the good work. Bye.
Thank you.